absolutely refuse to do it!
If you watch enough media, it can sometimes become a blur. Every once in a while, however, you'll see something that is so subversive, so fundamentally different from what you've seen before, that it comes as a shock to the system. For me, curiously taking a peek at the Sci-Fi Channel 8 one night, Perfect Blue was without a doubt shocking. When I first saw Perfect Blue, what stood out to me was its grounded and realistic tone. Everything looked so understated. It wasn't the usual loud and over-the-top anime fare that I was used to. The conflict felt more psychological than anything else. I couldn't help but wonder, what was this exactly? It was dark, it was mysterious, and most importantly, it was compelling. Sure, I'd seen Ninja Scroll and Akira at this point, and I was probably too young to be watching them in all honesty, but they were what my idea of mature stories were. Those films, however, were so far removed from reality, dealing with issues like powerful demons and world-ending psychics. This was something completely different. If you've seen a Satoshi Kon film, you know that for the most part, they're a little more realistic and smaller in scope than a usual animated film. Tokyo Godfathers, Millennium Actress, and Perfect Blue may share elements of a loud and sprawling anime epic, but they don't necessarily revolve around anything grandiose. At their core, they're about real people, facing real issues with just a touch of magical realism thrown in. There was a sense of grit that was palpable in Perfect Blue. It was dark and grounded. But it wasn't so grounded that it was hampered by the rules that it sets. On the contrary, Perfect Blue took all the rules and bent them to its will. It goes to great lengths to establish a mundane and ordinary world, only to rip it apart and leave the rest of the film in an almost dreamlike setting. Kon often uses character designs that are more lifelike and resemble ordinary people. For the most part, this is the case here as well. Characters like Mima, her PR team, and especially the background characters, look very unassuming. One of the ways that we see this stark contrast is through the various posters and anime imagery that litter the background. These posters showcase cartoonish and stylized characters, while more ordinary and generic characters walk amongst them. These motifs work towards reinforcing the idea that this film runs contrary to the status quo, the preconceived notion of what goes into an animated film. In other words, the public's perception. Taking a closer look at the film's themes and central ideas, you'll realize that perception, and more precisely, the idea of how the world perceives you, is at Perfect Blue's foundation. The film deals with concepts such as identity and social status. As Mima gradually sheds her identity due to external pressures, she slowly has to come to terms with the consequences of that. This, in turn, creates its own conflict, in which Mima finds herself at odds with how others see her, and moreover, with how she sees herself. When Mima is coerced into making increasingly dodgy career moves, her public image begins to bleed into her self-image. This inner conflict results in the appearance of CHAM Mima, or Mima's vision of her past self, that emerges from her computer one night, donning her old auto uniform. CHAM Mima is a manifestation of Mima's self-doubt, going so far as to call herself the Real Mima. She acts as a very clear separation from the life Mima once lived to the life that she lives now. I think CHAM Mima really demonstrates Kon's mastery of the medium. She may be a copy of Mima's character design, but there are elements that clearly make her presence known. She radiates an eerie glow and has a sense of weightlessness to her, bouncing from scene to scene with an unsettling ease. Expanding on Kon's use of animation for a moment though, let's talk about the color palette in Perfect Blue. The color red is used heavily throughout, and while there may be some less than subtle examples of it, like Mima's room or a random elevator floor being engulfed in red, the color is meticulously placed in other scenes. The small trim of red in the background, for example, suggests a subtlety and control over the color palette that can only really be done through animation. There are many reflective surfaces in this film that work towards establishing a sense of truth. This is doubly important when analyzing Perfect Blue because at some point the film definitely goes off the rails. It becomes much harder to tell what's real, with Mima constantly waking up from nightmares and daydreams, leaving the film timeline a blurry mess. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly where we are, and it serves as a way to confuse the viewer's sense of space and muddy the truth. Audience misinformation also plays a huge part in this. We see Mima commit these acts of violence, but were they real or just part of the show? At this point, we can't really tell what the evidence we're presented with. For some, it may straddle the line between mysterious and confusing, but I personally found it engaging, drawing me deeper into the story as it revealed its own depth. Things start to become clearer once we're in the third act, however. In this climactic scene, Mima's manager Rumi is revealed to have been the driving force behind the many attacks on Mima's well-being, both physical and mental. She stands in front of a mirror, wearing a wig and an outfit similar to the one seen in Mima's idol days. While Mima still sees Rumi as CHAM Mima, we can clearly see her true form in the mirror. It's a deeply disturbing scene that recontextualizes our previous encounters with CHAM Mima. We see in this shot here that while CHAM Mima has the same graceful bounce that we've seen earlier, Rumi runs frantically in the reflection beside her. From this, we can conclude that reflections serve as a way to establish a sense of truth and allow us, the viewer, to distinguish that truth from fantasy. Skipping to the end of this sequence, notice how when Rumi impales herself on a shard of glass, she gazes at the fragments on the floor, almost as if she's facing a shattered truth. After some time has passed, Mima goes to check on Rumi in some sort of facility. Rumi walks up to a mirror and sees CHAM Mima. While this is presumably from Mima's point of view, whether or not this plays out from Rumi's perspective as well is unclear. It's interesting to note that earlier it was the other way around, with Rumi living in reflections. In either case, this only adds to the film's ambiguous ending since we're not entirely sure if this whole CHAM Mima issue has been finally put to rest. We do get some closure, however, since shortly after, Mima gets into her car, looks in the rearview mirror, and says with complete certainty that she is in fact the real Mima. Now, going beyond the motif scene of the film itself, it's strange that a film as old as Perfect Blue is actually more relevant in today's age than ever before. The idol scene that was prevalent in the 1990s has flourished, and has actually made a pretty healthy transition further into the digital age. While this film doesn't exactly predict the future, a lot of what we see here has only gotten worse with the advent of social media. In Japan, there was a news story of one stalker who found the location of an idol using only the reflections in her eyeball seen on a post. Since 1997, the year of the film's release, the societal pressures that Mima found herself in have only proliferated. Idols frequently receive death threats over trivial things such as dating rumors. The issue doesn't lie solely with the fans either, with managers and producers taking over every aspect of an idol's life, all in the name of branding. In today's age, making yourself a commodity has become a 24-hour job. This can surely bleed into your private life until you almost completely lose your sense of self. It's unfortunately a dark topic, but the bottom line is that the more obsessive fans, as well as the controlling producers, have to realize the impact that they have on the lives and well-being of these young celebrities. It's a film not just about how the world sees you, but how the influence of others can transform how you see yourself. If left unchecked, the burden to keep up appearances can be overwhelming and draw you into a world of disillusionment and self-doubt. In striving to stay true to your thoughts and desires, when others may pull you in all sorts of different directions, taking in the good influences and filtering out the bad becomes paramount. Above all else, don't lose sight of yourself, because you're the only one who truly knows what makes you